I think I have to report something very negative, something very sad. I have been betrayed multiple times, and when that happens, at some point, you come up with a decision. What has happened? The first betrayal happened unknown to me, and it's basically the final straw. Also, it was the first. I've been betrayed by a Spanish gestoría. It's an administrative agency to file paperwork. When in 2017 I created the Spanish limited liability company, I went to them and I asked for advice and for explanations to help me set up such a limited liability company. And they did that, and everything went smooth. We went to the notary to file the paperwork, and there was a limited liability company. What I did not know at that time, and nobody explained to me, is that they also enrolled me into the Spanish Social Security as an independent worker, as an autónomo. That is something that needs some explanation, but I will jump ahead. Because of this registration without my consent, now Social Security is after me for some 40,000 euros. And that is a very, very bad thing to happen. So what is the problem? In Germany, where I am from, when you form a company, then you are the shareholder, and you are also the legal representative, the managing director of that company, and you are not a worker, you are not an employee. In Germany, there is no social security as one system. There are several insurance schemes, so there's health insurance, there is insurance for the pension, which will later be paid by the government. There's unemployment and a bunch of other things. And as a worker, as an employee, your employer will do these payments on your behalf and is also obligated by law to pay a part of this as a company. Of course, the cost of the employer is the sum of all this. So, to give an example, and just for the sake of the example, actual salaries obviously are different. But let's say your salary is 1,000 euro, then the actual cost of the employee is 1,800 roughly. Now you can do the math and try this with 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 net salary, and then you will see how this plays out. And with that knowledge, and my experience in other countries of this world, Panama, United States, I did not expect that there would be something different from that when you register a limited liability company. I also did expect that the agency who handled the paperwork would advise me. They didn't. So that is the first problem, why I say I've been betrayed. The second part is a little bit more severe. In Spain, they have electronic government. So that means paper does not exist anymore. Everything goes electronically. you are issued a digital certificate. And I know what that is because I'm an IT guy. And obviously, once they told me, you need to get a digital certificate with your tax ID number, which there is another thing that I should explain to you. And I'm making this video especially for those who are not from Europe, let's say from the US, or who are from elsewhere in Europe but also don't know. So it is for your own benefit if you happen to do something in Spain. General advice: be a tourist. Just visit. Don't do anything. Don't get in touch. Don't get into any business dealing. And refuse everything, flat out. Because then you might end up like me. So don't do this. So here's the thing. As a non-Spaniard, you are assigned an identification number for foreigners. Initially, Spain did this for actual foreigners. So let's say you are from India and you move for some reason to Spain. Then you get such an identification number for foreigners, NIE, Número de Identificación de Extranjero, and you get a plastic card that is your ID card. Now the problem is Spain tried to do this in the beginning with European citizens. As European citizens, we have 4 basic rights, and one of these 4 basic rights is not only the freedom of movement, but also the freedom to settle and work within the Union wherever we please. We don't need to ask for a permission. We are citizens of the European Union, and that also means that I, as a European citizen from Germany, with my German ID card, I am equal to a Spaniard, and I have all the rights, I can do all the things, I don't have to ask for anything. I can participate in the unified market within the European Union with no limitations. The only difference is that my ID card is from Germany, and the Spaniard has one, which is from Spain. They call this DNI, Documento Nacional de Identificación, so National Identification Document. That's the only difference. And of course now there's a problem if Spain assigns such ID cards to European citizens who already have an ID card that is valid. And so there was trouble in the past, and then Spain pulled this back and came up with a different idea. Now, instead of giving you an ID card, they started to hand out a little piece of green paper and advised people to laminate it after cutting out the little card somewhere on this piece of paper. So they wanted a card. And then more trouble forced Spain to stop this. And finally, and it works for the Spanish system, finally this number became a tax ID for European citizens. And now you just get a letter. And there's your tax ID number. There's no card. So, but then, in the background, lures something that you might feel is a trap. What lures in the background is that number identifies you for every purpose. It is not an ID just for paying taxes. It is an ID for everything. Yeah, an ID for everything. Spanish people apparently have no issue with that. I'm thinking about privacy and data protection and all that, and also identity theft. And we kind of have a case of that. So that number is you. And when you go to some place to set up a contract, They don't care about your name, about your days of birth, and where your residence is and stuff like that, like elsewhere. They only care about your ID number. So in a Spanish contract, it says person whatever with ID. And then the other person, whatever, doesn't really matter, with ID. So it is a contract between two ID numbers, essentially. Bear this in mind. Now, keep this in mind, because it's pretty important. So, what happened? As they do e-government, you need to identify yourself somehow to these e-government services. And so Spain runs, other countries do this now also, Spain runs a huge public key infrastructure where you can identify yourself by using a digital certificate on your device in your web browser to identify yourself against the government website. All government websites. Banks don't participate in that, and that is why all the Spanish people tell me, don't worry about this. Nobody can get to your bank account with that. Yeah, that's true, not directly. But as I said, I have trouble, and they do get after your bank account. Not directly, but they do. So all these agencies who want to file paperwork for you, taxes, registration, you want to change something in your car, you need to do something with the government, and you don't know how to fill out the forms, they ask you always for a copy of your digital certificate. From a security point of view, that is insane. The person in possession of a copy of a digital certificate is the person this certificate belongs to. And there is no way that you can prove that the one in possession of your digital certificate did something without your consent. That will be very difficult. They are you. So initially I did ask, because I know how these things work. Okay, so what is the official process? I have a digital certificate. There must be a way that I can authorize you so that you can do work with your own certificate. And there's also a trail in some logs, paper trail, that I didn't do this, but you did. And the answer is no, that does not exist, or we don't know. I have been through several of these agencies. I come close to 10. And it's always the same. And it's a nightmare. So what happened in 2017 is, after I got my brand new digital certificate, they explained me, you either give me it so that I can do my work, or I cannot, and then we will not be able to register a company. And little did I know what this will create later. So they took my certificate and registered myself without asking, without explaining, as an autonomous worker representing a Spanish limited liability company. That is a huge thing. At that time, I have been working for my other business in Germany, from Germany, for client elsewhere on this planet. No client in Germany, no client in Spain. That is important. And EU law is very clear about this. If an EU citizen is already doing business, is already enrolled in some flavor of social security, the German one is a little bit different, but still you can call it. It is some sort of social security. Then that citizen cannot be enrolled by another member state of the Union in their own system, regardless of what they do. The Spanish law is also very clear. If you are just the representative, a managing director of a Spanish limited liability company, and you get no payment. It does not matter what else exists. You are not working in Spain. And therefore, you are not obligated to register in Social Security. You are simply a shareholder, a legal representative of the company, and you might sign employment contracts, but that is not working. That is enabling someone else to work. You have a formal position, but you're not directing daily work and stuff like that. And if you were, you would probably also draw a salary. But because this gestoria, this agency, took my digital certificate, and by hand of them, I, being represented by that certificate, did register in Social Security, also I didn't know, I started to accumulate contributions that went unpaid. And when I learned very, very late about this, of course, first I tried to explain, but hey, this has to be an administrative mistake. Who registered me? And there are some reports that you can find when you research that topic. And you will see that here and there, Spanish Social Security administratively registers foreigners as autonomous workers when they represent the company, because they simply assume you must be working. And if you also have a NIE, this foreigner ID number, which you do when you sign any contract in Spain for any purpose, then they also assume, yeah, you must be in Spain and working. Why would anyone do anything? And they cannot see from their vantage point that you do not draw a salary, because salary payments can be in different ways. But on the other hand, if you are an official employee of a company, then they do know, because you are also registered as an employee, and employees in Spain have a contract that is with the government and the company, which is another funny thing to someone who's not used to that. So there was nothing that I could do. I can sue that agency, but then of course I would have to have proof that they did not inform me. And of course they will say they did. And it's a verbal thing. no witnesses. So this goes nowhere. So that's the first betrayal. And of course, I need to pay up. So there goes 40,000 euro. Then, long-time viewers know about that. There were up to 3 employees over the time. Based on my other work, I prefer to collaborate, teach people, help people to self-organize. I am not the type of person who likes to give orders. I don't like to run a factory, and I never will. So I tried to build a team, and I failed. And the reason why I failed is a mix of culture and laws. This video should be short. I will not go into too many details, because you can read this up on your own. You can ask ChatGPT about culture, and it will explain. It's pretty good at that, by the way. It has read a lot of books, and it will happily summarize these things for you. So these 3 employees also betrayed me to a different degree. And they did this because they think that they have a right. Well, it sounds strange, but they are probably believing that they did nothing wrong, that they had a right to take, to do the wrong thing. So what are these wrong things? Of course, money is involved. And Spain is a very strange country. I did mention Spanish labor laws a few times to people outside Spain, and they all were astonished. So here's the thing. The first one lost his motivation somehow, came late, let the other one wait. They were traveling in the same vehicle. And then, of course, both showed up late. Didn't like to do the things. Didn't like to put fence posts in and stuff like that. So he was a drag. Yeah? Like an anchor. He slowed down the other guy. And so one day I said, okay, look, this is not working out. We need to terminate our relationship. And here's the problem. In Spain, you can fire people on the spot. That's no problem. They will not show up. But there is a mandatory severance payment. And even on a minimum salary, which this case was, that minimum severance payment that results is already 5,000 euro. So you have someone who is not performing as you expect, for whatever reason, doesn't really matter. You can say you're out of here and it costs you 5,000 euro. And with every year you have this person on staff, the amount grows. In Germany and in most other European countries, you can say, look, it's not working. I will terminate your employment. And then, depending on the time this person has worked for the company, you can then either let this person finish their term. So let's say they have accumulated 2 months. Then they will come to work for 2 months. You pay the regular salary. And at the end, you pay them out what is left of their paid vacation. It has a monetary value, so you just pay that. And that's it. So you get something for the money that you pay. And of course, in most settings, it is absolutely possible to use the labor of someone. Also, you decided that the performance is not up to the standard that you expect. They will do something. Most people will even understand it and will not become a disgruntled employee. Of course, if you want to get rid of them right away, you can do this and you offer them a severance payment. Basically, a one-time payment of everything that you would pay over the next 2 months, and maybe something on top so that they accept it. But mostly, it just plays out that they continue working and everything is fine. In Spain, that is not possible. Spain prides itself by having the strictest labor laws in the whole world. And yeah, that's all it seems. So the worker can do whatever they want, and the only way to stop this is by firing them on the spot and then paying a lot of money. Only in one case, and that is the next betrayal, did I not had to pay this because the person simply committed fraud, and the company that was involved, the customer who bought cows for 13,000 euros, still hasn't paid. So they made some deal amongst themselves. Police reports were filed. There was a hearing in front of a judge. And so it was clear that this person committed fraud and therefore no severance payment. but I'm still out those 13,000 for the cows. The cows got slaughtered the next day, and now I have another problem. The owner of that company, who made this deal with the employee in order to not pay for the cows, did present our invoice to the tax office in order to get reimbursed the value-added tax, which is 21% in Spain. I did not present this unpaid invoice. I made the usual thing in the accounting and said, no, it has not been paid, and therefore let's cancel this invoice for the time being and issue a new one later. But the other guy did present it so that he gets the value-added tax to pocket it, likely. And now the Spanish tax office, of course, by running a shadow accounting, so I should explain that, is now asking for the value-added tax that normally the other guy would have paid, and I would then have handed it over to the tax office so that they then can reimburse the other guy as a company, because value-added tax, so for the Americans, it is not the same as sales tax. So in the US, when you buy something in state, you pay a sales tax. And that's it. And everybody pays the sales tax. The sales tax is also a lot lower. Value-added tax is a consumer tax. So if you buy a coffee, that coffee, the price for the coffee includes value-added tax, and you as a consumer pay this. Companies don't pay it, but companies charge it to the consumer and then hand it over to the tax office. And everything that a company buys is also VAT included, but as a company you can deduct it. So at the end of the month you figure out how much VAT you have paid and how much you have received, and then if it is more, if there's a positive balance, you send the money to the tax office, or else you get it back, because you are not a consumer, you are a company. Sales tax, everybody pays. Totally different thing, cannot be compared. So it is for physical persons as a consumer. And the third one, I will not go into too many details right now because it is still a pending case. But there's also a betrayal involved. And you can see there's something wrong here. And now there comes another thing on top of that. So let me say this in a different way. In a country that is governed by the rule of law, everybody is the same in front of the law, or else it wouldn't be a country governed by the rule of law. So a citizen, an institution, the government, we are all equal in front of the law. If one of us is not equal in front of the law and has special rights, then it becomes doubtful. There are now many different names how you could call this, but there's a problem. So it restricts your ability to do things. It's not business friendly anymore, and it's also not safe. So in Spain, the tax office and social security both can bypass the court system. They are the accuser, jury, and judge in one person. So in my case, Social Security determined that I owe them that money based on this registration that I never did, but someone did it on behalf of me by using my digital certificate, and therefore I did it, supposedly. There's a digital fingerprint of this certificate being used, And by law, that's me. So beware of that. And so they determined, okay, I owe them that money, and I owe them that money since 2017. And so they don't have to file a lawsuit. They just notify, and of course notifications is another thing. A notification means they don't send you a letter, they send you maybe an email or publish this somewhere. And then after 10 days, if you have not read it, because you don't know, or some of these agencies read with your digital certificate your notifications, then you have been notified. And if you don't open this, or nobody opens it, after 10 days, you have been notified regardless. And so, whatever the government says, stands. Doesn't matter if you know about it or not. So that means there's a case being mounted without your knowledge, if you're unlucky, as I am. And then, after some time, they proceed with legal measures. So they will seize assets, they will seize property, they will seize your bank account. They will seize everything that they can seize, as long as it has your name on it and it is in Spain. So they started the proceedings to seize my land, because it is registered under my name. There are other family members involved, but it doesn't matter. They seized this nonetheless. And there's no way, no legal way, to stop this. I cannot file an injunction or things like that, because none of that will halt the proceedings. When it comes to tax and social security, the interpretation is that you owe society, and of course you did this on purpose, cannot be a mistake. And also in Spain you have to self-declare your taxes, so you are supposed to know how much taxes you owe the government, and then you declare this and send a payment. And if you made a mistake because you don't know, you committed fraud, and you will be fined, because you did this on purpose. There's no other way that you made a mistake. You did this to pay less. And there's a cultural angle to this, but let's not divert into that. So there's nothing that one can do other than pay. And so every lawyer says, yeah, that is the usual way in Spain. They call this in Spanish, pague y recurre. So it means first you pay, and then you file a complaint. And the complaint, that is now the problem with the rule of law, might take years to be processed. Eventually, you might prevail and win the lawsuit, and then the government has to pay you back whatever damage they caused. The problem is, not every damage can be compensated by money. So, imagine, they actually seize this land and sell it at an auction. And here comes the other thing. So listen very carefully. Let's say they do this for real. Of course, I'm doing things to prevent it from happening, but there is no legal recourse. So how do I prevent it? By paying, because it's the only way. But let's say it happens. So now they have sold it. I lost my land, and the debt has been paid. And now I file a lawsuit in order to get the money back. And it takes 5 years. And that is very uncertain what they will eventually pay me back. And of course, what nobody will pay, because it has no monetary value, is any of that, any of the work. Because the likely buyer of this will not care about all these trees and other things. They will use this as a cattle ranch. and they will exploit it. And nobody will pay for that. So all the work gets destroyed, obliterated. And here's the other detail, and I warn you. So know what you're getting into if you are pondering about doing something in Spain. You can do things in Spain, but you need to think hard about asset protection. And it may then not worth it. Not be worth it. So here's the other thing. Let's say, as an example, you owe the government 50,000 euro. And you have a piece of land worth 500,000. They will still seize it, and they will still auction it off if you do not pay the 50,000 that they say you owe them. And it doesn't matter how much anyone will pay. So if they find a buyer who will offer 60,000, also the land is worth 500,000, and there are documents, valuations and all that, they will sell it for 60,000. I asked several people, and yes, it's true, they will actually do this. And it's legal. So they seize a 500,000 euro asset, sell it off for 60. Your debt is paid, those 50,000. And the remaining 10 grand, well, you have to fight for them. They will not hand them over. You have to file a lawsuit and force them to give you the remaining 10. But you can see, they destroy a value of 500,000 in order to get their hands on 50,000. They don't care, because it is a punishment. You have betrayed Spanish society. You did something wrong, or maybe you didn't, but you can't prove it. And so, that is a punishment. It's a punishment where no judge, no jury, nothing has been involved. Because I say jury, in Europe there is no jury. That's a common law thing that you know in the US. In Europe there's only a judge. But you get what I'm trying to express. So, that is very dangerous. And it also throws out the window a very important legal principle, the principle of proportionality. It is deemed unlawful to seize a 500,000 property for a debt of just 50. The property is worth 10 times, and it's unproportionate. In Germany, when that happens, they will put a lien on the property for 50, and that's it. And then they will wait and wait and wait. And if you later at some point sell your property that was worth at that time 500, and you sell it for, let's say, 400 or for 600, well, they will then take their cut, those registered 50,000, and that's it. And you get to keep everything else. In Spain, that's not the case. They do not register a lien about a fixed amount. They seize the property in itself. And the amount is open-ended. So basically, it's legal theft, if you want to say it like this. And so, I'm leaving. That is not a place where I can live and do business. I need the rule of law, and I also need that certain legal principles, like proportionality, are upheld. I cannot live in a place where the government can do whatever they want, and the citizen has no recourse. We need a level playing field. And now I understand, and maybe you also, why nobody is doing anything in Spain, around here in this area. Why I'm the only foreigner, the only idiot, who actually tries to improve something. Everybody said, this is probably illegal what you're doing. You can't plant other trees that are not oak trees of a specific type. And they told me stories about people being fined for planting trees. And it was always very strange to hear. I don't know what actually happened because nobody really tells you that. But who knows? So what I'm going to do is I will turn myself into what I was, into a tourist. I will cut all ties with Spanish institutions and make sure that I'm just a visitor. I have every right to visit. I have every right to do things. I am a European citizen. But I will protect myself from the Spanish government. And also from anyone who is trying to play tricks on me, to think that they can siphon off the fruit of my hard labor. My labor in a totally different field. So I'm cutting my losses, and you might see it that way, that I'm basically throwing away some 60,000 now, all included, and I'm walking away. I'm also throwing away, in a way, everything that I paid the 3 employees over the years. I got no benefit. The plan to create a company, a great team, to offer agricultural products in a sustainable way, that failed. So this is also a loss, and I worked for it. And like I said in the past, in some videos, I'm not employing anyone, so I said, and now I'm leaving, on top of not employing anyone. So everything will come to a pause. And it might come a little bit to a shock, like a shock to some of you. And you will ask, okay, what is going to happen? Will you abandon the land? Will you sell it? What about the dogs, about the other animals? What about the trees that got planted? Yeah, those are important, serious, and interesting questions. So let me put it that way. I will stop making videos. Maybe not completely. I like you guys. You have been following along. And there is a larger group of people who watch every video. So thank you for your interest and for all the interesting comments. So I will not abandon you. But you need to understand that given that situation, I will not be able to do a video every couple of days or once a week or something like that. I need to sort out a few things. The land will turn green. There is rain in the forecast. And then something will happen. And of course, I will not leave physically. I can be a tourist. I can be a tourist on my own land after I have saved it. But it will certainly be difficult to show you happily, look what we did and how we did it. That will be impractical. But I might here and there do a new video showing you what has been done, what has been achieved, but it will be infrequent. I need to focus on something else. I need to get the money back. Well, the government will not pay it back. I need to earn it again. And of course, this takes away the funds that I had been earmarking for improvement work, like, for example, a pond. So So I'm walking here. So you can see over there is the area. And in that area, I wanted to build a pond, a very large one, this autumn, this fall. But that involves a significant amount of money. And given that I now have to spend it on something that I never ordered, it's not there. And the same goes for that holding tank and another irrigation system and all the other things that I talked about in the last few videos. That was the plan. I cannot do that either. So we will simply fix a few things that need fixing off camera. And that's it for now. And I guess I will see you back here again sometime later with some positive news. The problem will be solved, but that's not for video. So have a good one. Don't be disappointed. Understand, if you ever want to do something in Spain, there are challenges. And by the way, that is something that you might ask in a question. So let me slip this in and then say goodbye a second time. Volunteers internship. No. That is not possible in Spain. Because Social Security deems everything as labor. And you will be fined. You cannot have volunteers. You cannot have interns like in other countries. You can have volunteers if you are a non-profit organization that is known by the government. Or else it will just be cheap labor, or payment will be done off the books, and they are trying to find those payments. So this is a very, very slippery road. And basically everybody who gives volunteers a chance in Spain and is not a non-profit organization registered with the government is already halfway doing the wrong thing and might face fines, if someone cares to look. So with people from Spain, it does not work. And with people from elsewhere in Europe or elsewhere in the world, of course, it is much harder to prove for the government that those are actually employees. And one criteria is you need to be some established organization. So if I had a commercial pig operation that is definitely producing pigs, forget volunteering. That would be clearly illegal, because it would be seen as hiring laborers. I have a few pigs. Okay, if someone helps in the morning to do the chores, it is much more difficult to accuse me of hiring a foreign worker who is in fact a volunteer and is here to have a good time. This is another problem. And so I cannot do any of the things that I wanted in Spain, and therefore I am leaving. There might be still ways to get back to planting and all that, but it must be in a totally different way, and it has to be the legal way as Spain wants it to be. And that's it. So, second time. I hope you got something out of this. I see it's already long. Too long, far too long. But now you know why. And I hope to see you in the future here with some positive news. So have a good one and enjoy whatever you will do next. And I'm sorry that I'm the bearer of bad news.